Currently, our users collection within our database is empty. So to insert the documents within this users collection, we can make use of InsertOne and InsertMany function in the Kotlin Mongo driver. Now, in this video, we will first begin with inserting one, then we will insert many documents, and finally, we will also see how we can insert all the users from this JSON file into our users collection. You can find this JSON file in the GitHub repository linked in the video's description. So you can download this file. Now, in the last video, we created this Mongo database factory. Instead of class, let's convert it to object so that we have single instance of our database and we do not accidentally create multiple instance of our database in the memory. So we can simply convert from class to the object, and instead of private we can make it accessible. Now for the users collection, within this root package, let's create a new Kotlin class and name it as users data source. Within this class we can access the database as private val dv equals Mongo database factory, and we can refer to this dv property. Now for the users collection we can say private val users collections equals, and we can say db dot get collection, and we can pass the name of collection as users since we have users collection name as users. So what this get collection does is, if this users collection doesn't exist within the database, it will simply create the users collection, and in case if this users collection already exists, then it will refer to that users collection. Now, as you can notice, we need to give type of this users. So what are the information that is included within each document within this users collection? So for that, within this root package, let's create a new class and let's say user entity. So this will include all the information that we want to include within this user document, within this users collection. So on the one end, we need to specify the JSON ID. So this is basically the primary key. So we can say ID and type a string, and we can use this object ID and convert this to a string. So this will be the primary key. Now let's have property like name of type string, also email of type string. We can have profession of type string, age of type integer, and finally country of type string. Now in our users data source, we can refer to this users entity. So each document within this users collection will have these values. Now we can create a new data package. Let's create a new data package and let's move this user entity within this data package, also this users data source and this Mongo database factory. Now to insert single user entity within this users collection, we can refer to the InsertOne function. So we can create a function, let's say suspend function insert one user, and we can get the entity as user entity, and in response we can return the boolean if the insertion was successful. To insert, we can simply say users collection dot insert one, and we can pass the entity, and we need to call this was acknowledged, else the insertion will not occur. After calling this was acknowledged, we get a boolean, and we can simply return this boolean to indicate whether the insertion is successful or failed. Now to insert multiple user entity, we can make use of InsertMany. So we can say suspend function insert multiple users, and we can get entities as list of user entity. Now we can simply say users collection dot insert many, and we can pass the entities, and we can call this was acknowledged, and finally we can return this. So using InsertOne we can insert single entity, and using InsertMany we can insert the list of entity. Now let's create some route to call this InsertOne and insert multiple users. So for that we can move to this routing file, and we already have one route. We can simply remove this one, and let's create a post request and give it a path as user. And to receive these values from the request data, we can create a data class user. So we can say data class user. Since id will be generated while inserting, so we can say id equals null, so that this id becomes optional, and other value is compulsory. So we can simply copy this, and we can add it over here. Now we can receive this as a request data payload. So we can say val user equals call dot receive, and type is user. Also we need to mark this as serializable. We can simply import this one. Now we need to convert this user to user entity to be able to insert. So within this we can simply create one function, this function to user entity, and we will return user entity, and we can say user entity, and we can say name equals name, email equals email, profession equals profession, age equals age, and finally country equals country. Now we can simply say return. Now to convert this user to entity, we can simply say val entity equals users dot to user entity. So using this function we converted our user from request data to the user entity. Now we can say val result equals, now we need to get the instance of user's data source, so we can get it as a parameter within this configure routing function. Now we can say users data source dot insert one user, and we can pass the entity. Now this is boolean, so we will simply respond with a map. So we can say call dot respond, and we can say map of, and let's say success to result. So if the insert is successful, then it will say success true, else success false. We can copy this and create the path users to insert the multiple users, and in receive we can simply say list of user instead of one user, since we want to be able to insert multiple users. Now we can call this as users equals call dot receive list of user. Now we can convert this to entities as users dot and map, and we can say it dot to user entity. We converted this list of user to list of user entities. Now in result we can call the function insert multiple users and pass the entities, and for response we'll respond with the same success to result value. If the insert is success, then it will say success true, else success false. So now within our application module function we can get rid of this one and say users data source equals users data source, and we can simply pass this to configure routing function. So we can pass the users data source. So let's run the application. Now I have this user object within this raw JSON body and making this request to the user path. So if I make the request, it's a success true. And if we reload this, we get to see the users that we inserted. So this user is now inserted to our users collection. Now we can try to insert multiple users as well. So I already have these two users. Now if I make the request, it says success true. Now if we reload this one, now as you can see, we inserted this using InsertOne and we inserted this two using insert multiple. So now let's try to insert all the users. There are 50 users within this users.json file. Now to insert all of them, we can do something like, let's move to the routing file. Within this routing, we can copy this one and we can change the path as users from file, and the file path is dummy data slash users.json. So path is, now first we can get the JSON string using val JSON string equals, we can create a file object, we can pass the path, and we can say read text. So using the read text, we get this entire JSON array as a string. Now we can convert this JSON array string to the list of users. So we can say val users equals JSON dot decode from string, and we can pass the JSON string, and for the type we can specify list of user. So we get the list of users from this JSON array string. Now rest of the stuff remains same. We convert this users to users entities and finally get the result and respond with the result. Now if we run our application and to this users from file path, we can make this request and it's a success true. Now if we reload, as you can notice, all the users are loaded. So you can see the total document count 53. 50 are from this users JSON and 3 are the one that we already inserted. So this way we can even insert the documents from any file. So that should be it for this video. Thanks for watching and happy coding.